Okay, awesome. All right, I'll start. So welcome, Brian. It's so nice to see you. I'm glad we're chatting today about wasteful work. And I wanted to talk to you about this topic because I've been coaching a lot of mission-driven professionals. They're in government, they're in private sector, but they're all doing something related to social impact. They've been doing it for a long time. And in many cases, they are exhausted. The state of the world is overwhelming right now, needless to say. And they're in roles where they're really on the front lines trying to solve a lot of the problems that we're facing as a society. Uh, and what I really want to do as a coach is get to the bottom of why they're burning out, why they're tired, and how we can make them more resilient leaders, help them guide their teams to making a bigger impact, and just create the conditions for them to be able to sustain their effort so that they can, do their life's best work and bring out the best in the people around them. I think we really need them to be able to do that right now. And a lot of these organizations cannot afford to lose more people also. So there's a turnover problem we want to address. The thing that keeps coming up for me, in addition to, mindset stuff and communication tips and managing their work-life balance and all of that, is that people are getting absolutely crushed under wasteful work and doing things that are like, taking them down the wrong path. They're spending months working on dead-end projects. They're doing things that they just don't understand how it connects to the bigger picture or shared results on their team. Or they're working in really inefficient ways. They're constantly like searching for information that they can't find, pinging people all the time to get answers to questions that they should just have answers to. And I wanted to talk to you about this because I know you're not like an expert on burnout and culture, and all that kind of stuff, but you are an expert on wasteful work and on efficient work and improving processes. And so I think it is one of the most underlying, like unrecognized factors when it comes to burnout. And so for companies who aren't ready to address culture and talk about mental health and all those sorts of things, I wanted to talk about this because it's super actionable. So I want to turn it over to you to just introduce yourself for folks who don't know who you are and tell a little bit about how you got into this whole field of work around process improvement and what you're up to these days.
Jessica, thank you so much for inviting me to be here. We've gotten to work with each other multiple times, so this is such an honor for me to see you in this stage and in this part of your work, and I think it's really cool what you're trying to do. Burnout is a major conversation everywhere that I work, whether they're social workers or sheriffs in a jail, or they're even working, putting up flowers for the park. They constantly talk about being overworked, being burnt out, being frustrated. And it's definitely something that I'm passionate about. I think it's really cool to work in this space. So that's number one. I get to do this and I don't have to, but I get to. And I think that's the real thing that keeps me going. I got into the world of process improvement and innovation sort of from the Denver airport. We had a challenge that took place at Denver International Airport that resulted in a Continental airline crash. The plane came off the runway and one ambulance came to the airport. And a bunch of city employees for the city and county of Denver ended up driving the injured to the airport. No helicopter, no nothing came to the airport to solve for this problem. And Denver Health, who happened to be is the general hospital in the city and county of Denver, they had a process improvement program that they were like, we got to fix this through process improvement. And Jessica, no one wanted to from the airport. And so I was assigned to go to this training and to be part of this innovation. And I reluctantly did it. And it absolutely changed my life to recognize where I had power and control, to understand how simple changes to processes can have dramatic effects how we now get, when an ambulance starts rolling to DIA, there's actually an ambulance housed at DIA now. There are multiple ways an incident escalates because of all of this work, and it's really, really cool to be able to do it. We got really lucky. No one died in that incident. People were really hurt, and no one perished. 146 people on board, or whatever, and the pilot and first officer were the most injured, and they were injured predominantly from trying to keep the plane on the runway, which is fascinating. So they broke their legs, broke their arms,
Oh my God.
broke their collarbone, their sternum, you name it, trying to keep that plane on the runway. Really, really cool what they did. They are ridiculous heroes in keeping that plane on the ground. So really cool that I was able to do it. And what you were talking about is like, how do we talk about burnout and mindfulness and mental health? The first thing that I tell everyone, just like an airplane, you've got to put your oxygen mask on first. Just every single time, you need to be a little selfish in how you're handling it, what you're doing, and where you're going. In fact, I think last month we even wrote that in an article that we put together. So I've been doing this work for a company that I built called Change Agents Training. And we train people in process improvement, process transformation, to help them point out where wasteful work is taking place, and then to teach them really simple, practical skills to get rid of that wasteful work. We also challenge people not to use money. When they see a challenge, can they fix it without money? Can they fix it without additional technologies? Can they fix it without adding people to it? And in more cases than you would want to believe, the answer is always yes. And so what I teach people is, how do you see a problem? How do you talk about that problem? And then how do you solve it? And we call it the see it, say it, solve it technique.
Love that.
Yeah, a lot of people just solve.
Yeah.
Very few people see it, talk about it, socialize it, and then solve it. They just firefight or whack-a-mole the challenge. But one of the ways I talk about this work is useless work.
Yeah. And share more about that. Like what is it, and how can people see that it's around them? Or like, what are some examples of it so that people know what we're talking about when we talk about wasteful work?
Yeah, I'm working on a project right now to do some onboarding for some rural clients. And they have a process, I kid you not, that requires a new employee to fill out a form 38 times. They have 38 separate forms for an employee to start. And that means that they put their name on the form 38 times. They put their address on the form 38 times. They put the social security number on a form 38 times. That's the type of useless work that I see. The other types of things that I see a lot just is they then print it out, file it away, and they do that for each of the 38 forms. That's the type of useless work. And I believe that useless work sucks the joy out of your job. And the more you do it, the further it takes you away from your purpose.
100%. It's like a horrible distraction, right? It's like you think you're doing something and then the day's over and you're like, I never got to the most important thing I was supposed to do today
I
because
never enrolled someone in rental assistance.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And just for background, for people who don't know, when you're talking about these clients, rural clients, all of that, you're talking about government agencies. You're talking about cities, counties, municipalities, just for people who aren't familiar.
Yeah, and I mean, we work with for-profits too. We work with a toxic waste disposal company. I work with a couple of hotels. I work with a couple of hospitals, and they experience the exact same thing that governments experience. I mean, I worked with a toxic disposal company. They had 7 signatures to get someone an offer letter. Those 7 signatures required them to lose out on employees on a daily basis. Because look, if it takes you 3 days to get me an offer letter, I'm going to Amazon and I'm going to get that job today. And it's one thing if you don't pay what Amazon pays, but it's another thing if you take longer to help someone get that job. It's even harder. That's the type of stuff that I work on. We refer to this in my industry as the work of work. The work of work is the least sexy thing I think out there. You never look at how you do what you do. You try to do it fast just so you can do something else. And that gets you 38 forms because no one knows how to subtract, but we all know how to add.
Yeah, and I love that because there's so many hacks out there about how to be more productive, how to, get things done faster, how to time box your day and all these sorts of things. And I think productivity is one thing, but reductionism is something else that I think gets lost in productivity conversations. And it's so critical to wasteful work because we're not just talking about become more efficient and do things faster and become more focused and more of a machine at your job. It's about how do you get rid of all of the shit that is taking you away from doing the things that are most important, right? And how do you just eliminate them? Can you talk more about that?
Well, first, I want to say you're the first one to cuss, so that is.
Oh, it's welcome. It's okay. We can
That's unusual for me on a podcast. I'm usually the first person to start cursing, so I love that we have that sort of space.
If we're talking about wasteful work, it's all welcome here. Be a human.
Oh my gosh,
go for it.
You absolutely made my day. So first of all, thank you for that. Second of all, I think those hacks are what they are. They're hacks. And productivity at work drives me nuts. Because we all think like, oh, I'm just going to hack my day by only responding to emails at 3. Well, that means if I asked you a simple question, I have to wait till 3:15 to get that answer. That's not a hack. That's actually really disrespectful. And it drives me nuts. It means that you think that your time is more important than anyone else's. And it absolutely erodes the faith in teamwork. Teamwork works when you all help each other and work with each other, not on your schedule at 3:00. And I had a boss who did that to me. Every day at 3:00, they vomited their email inbox into my email inbox. And I had from 3 to 5 to try to get it done. Well, I was also working all day. So it would have been really cool if they had sent me some of that stuff throughout the day, because then I could have worked on it.
Yeah.
So those types of like, oh, only do this and this and only get into the flow.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. And when you only get into the flow, I think you really don't understand how you're performing your own system of work. So how do you do what you do? Who do you do it for? Why are you doing it is vitally important.
What advice would you give to, a leader who has that 3 p.m. time block for responding to emails and is really trying to carve out time for deep work, to carve out time for writing, for thinking, for, the 45 emails, or I'm sorry, meetings that they have between the hours of 5 a.m. and 3 p.m. How would you talk to that leader about how they can, eliminate wasteful work, be more respectful, be a better team player, really focusing on like the shared results versus just the productivity hacks?
First piece is look for patterns. Why are people calling you or emailing you all the time? What is the pattern and where are they getting this request? So that's the first thing. The second thing is, why do you have to respond to every email? Do you have to respond? So if you're writing to Jessica, hey, Jessica, this, and this, if Jessica has to respond for clarity, that's a bad email. And you just increased Jessica's workload and Jessica's wait time. So how do you do an email that I send to you, and you have all the information that you need to be successful in providing that work. The challenge, what I just described, is called creating autonomy of your team. They need to be able to do their work without asking for help and without you overseeing every single bit of it. This is like Daniel Pink's, autonomy, mastery, and purpose, right?
Exactly. Yep.
More often than not, I do not see leaders understanding how to create autonomy amongst their workforce.
That's right.
And I want you, Jessica, to call me once a month, once a week. If you have to call me all day or email me all day, you don't have autonomy in what you're doing.
That's right.
And then you and I need to sit down and figure out, how do we build you to be autonomous from asking for help? And a lot of that comes to a checklist, a procedure, a workflow procedure, a template, things that you can use as desk aids and job aids to perform your job without asking for permission.
There's one other piece that comes to mind for me too, which is not just knowing how to do my job, but understanding what my job is. I'll also send emails all the time, have unnecessary back and forth when they don't have visibility into why they're doing what they're doing, or when conversations are happening in silos, when people are exclusively using one-on-one emails, they're left off threads, they're DMing each other in Slack or on Teams, they're not working in the open, they're not communicating in the open, nobody has visibility, right? And then there's way too much back and forth communication. So can you speak a little bit about, like, there's the standard operating procedure stuff, which is so about process. And there's this piece which is more cultural around, like, are we working in the open? Do we trust each other enough to be transparent when we have questions and to ask questions publicly? Like, where does that fit in terms of eliminating wasteful work? Can you speak more to those, like, types of examples?
I think you're talking about two or three different things here, but I want to talk about the first one, which is visual workplace is vitally important, that people can see what they're doing, see the production, and understand that. That's become harder now in the hybrid world. So you have to be really thoughtful at how you show the work. That's one piece. The second piece that you're talking about is, how do we build collision thoughtfully around our team members, that they have the opportunity to bring up challenges, that they have the opportunity to discuss it. And we have to create that environment for our team members so that they feel safe in doing so. So I think that's the secondary piece. And then the best way to do it, there are parts of silos that work and parts of silos that don't work. And when you have a service delivery that goes through multiple departments, figuring out how to visually see that is really important, so that you can show them how they work interconnectedly. You don't have to RACI, you don't have to matrix manage, you don't have to do that. If you demonstrate the way that we work is fundamental about how we provide the service.
I love that.
No matter what department you're in, it's the service that we are looking at. How does this service get provided? There might be 3 or 4 departments that are touched, but we need to have visibility into that workflow and that product or production of what's happening. And I think the best way to do that is to use visual management tools, whether they're Kanban charts, whether you're using Taleo, whether you have a Power BI that's showing you, your productivity for the month. That's totally fine. But the challenge is, how does this thing move through each department? And how can I see where something is when it's stuck? That's the visual management side that I think we miss out on tremendously. That helps you remove some of the silo.
I love that. I think that's a really good tip. I wanted to ask you for, folks who are thinking about like, well, is this because we originally framed this in terms of the context of, the individual, their own burnout, their own sort of dissatisfaction with their work. What do you see as the impact of wasteful work on teams, like team cohesion, team relationships, team effectiveness? And then also for people who are just like, I care about making money, I care about the bottom line of my organization. How do you frame it kind of for those two lenses, in addition to, the effect on the individual?
Any time that a whole team is providing some sort of useless work, a report that no one reads, it's going to erode the engagement of the team always. So understanding the value proposition that you're putting in, making sure that people understand that is a big why. The way that you would change that as a leader is to show people, to demonstrate how that has value and what value it provides to me. I can't tell you how many times that I've written a report that no one read. It is really heartbreaking every time you do it. I've also had bosses who said, hey, where's that report? And I sent it to them a week ahead of time.
That
Oh,
one hurts, doesn't it?
it's like a gut punch.
It is, yeah.
And I say this to a lot of people, finding the right fit for you is just as important as finding the right organization. And sometimes you're in the wrong organization and you're the right person. And I like to tell this story about, I love baseball analogies because I'm a dork and I'm old. And I would say, like, sometimes a player needs to be traded and they thrive when they go into a new environment. And I think you really have to look for the fit you have on the team. It's one thing to be in a company, it's another thing to be in the right fit and to not be afraid to move. I think people get nervous when they get into a company that they can't ever leave, or they're going to have a bad reputation because they were there 6 months. Or I think you really have to care for yourself. I think you have to look for, am I in the right position? Do I have the boss that I think I deserve? Do I need to move to a different spot to get a better boss? And I think we have to grant people permission to do that. That's
Yeah.
number
Yeah.
one. I am fixated, Jessica, that there is no one more powerful in any position than you. And you have to figure out how to help yourself thrive.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to be the beacon of light in darkness, that's cool. Go be the beacon and light in darkness. If you want a bunch of stars around you, go find those stars. But don't allow your organization to suck the soul out of you.
Mm-hmm.
And be okay with leaving it. And I know that, look, I'm an old white guy. I get it. And when you have people watching this, they're going to be like, what does the old white guy know? I grew up in a very impoverished household. I had a kid at a very young age, and I've had to make some really hard sacrifices to get to those positions. I've waited tables till 3 o'clock in the morning to be able to pay rent. And sometimes those are the types of things that we don't want to do, but we might have to do. And now I'm in a different position, right? Like I started with, I get to do this.
Yeah.
And I want everyone to get to do what they do for a living because I think it's fun.
Yeah.
I think it's inspiring. But sometimes you have to do some really hard stuff for yourself to break out of your burnout, to
Yeah.
break out of your frustration, to take a second and look at where is the fulfillment coming from. And you're in California. There's a book that I tell everyone to read, which is Designing Your Life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you have to look at those dials, they describe
Yeah.
them as, where do you find your play? Where do you find your energy? Where do you find your joy in your family? What are those types of things on your dials? And I think that has really helped me figure out, when I turn my work dial up, my fun dial comes down, my family dial comes down. And then I have to readjust it to really maintain my oxygen mask.
Yeah. I I'm all for people making the choices they need to make to remove themselves from situations that are just like not going to change, that are untenable. They've tried, it
Yeah.
hasn't worked out, they need to make a different choice and go somewhere else. I also think, and from my own personal experience as well, that it doesn't need to be the first resort, and that there are
Yeah.
ways to make like organizations and teams suck a whole lot less, that a lot of people aren't aware of, right?
I
Like,
mean, like Jessica, oh, this job kind of sucks, I'm out.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
there's, I think so often too, a lot of people suffer in silence
Yes.
and they're not always aware of like, it doesn't have to be this way. I can affect change from the inside. We can change the way we're doing things. I think a lot of leaders aren't aware of how burned out their reports are, their teams are on wasteful work because it doesn't get surfaced to them, how upset and disheartened they are that their reports never got read, or that they're not getting, the recognition for all of their work, or that they do months of work and it never sees the light of day. Like, I think that there are a lot of things that need to be surfaced in productive ways to improve those organizations. Because at the core, the mission of those organizations, the impact they have the potential to make is really huge.
Huge.
They're losing people because those people aren't saying, I'm doing wasteful work. I don't feel valued. I'm on the path to burnout because of these specific things. Here's how we can fix it. And here's what you need to be aware of as a leader. Here's what you need to be aware of as my peer. Here's the change that we can make internally. Let's see if this works before we just lose everybody, right? Um, and so for people who want to do something about it and they're not ready to leave yet and make that big life change, how do they first determine where they're seeing, like, how do they see it, right? So talk to me first about how they see it and could recognize where wasteful work is taking place, um, especially the bits that are like the most changeable, where they think they could have the biggest impact. How do they talk about it? How do they raise the issue in a constructive way to let others know what's going on? That isn't like, I think so many people don't want to say I'm burned out because it can feel shameful. It can feel like a direct reflection of like, I don't know how to manage my energy or my time or whatever it is. Um, but how can they frame it as, I want to improve the way we're all working here so that we can get better results and make everybody happier and enjoy their work and do it with more ease and bring out the creativity in people and all of these great qualities. So talk to me first about this, see it, and talk to me second about this, say it, and then we'll talk about solving it later.
Well, I love that you bring it up, and I don't know if I'm going to follow your advice on how to do this. I think it is a very vulnerable position to say you're burned out. I don't know that a lot of people would. And I think the first thing is you have to take stock in what's happening at your job. And I think you need to take a quick look at how you do what you do and stop thinking how other people do things to you. So, first, how do I do what I do? There's so much power and control in understanding where you have power and control. So I get something from you, Jess. I have to look at it. I have to read it. I have to respond to it. How do I do that work so that I don't have to tell you or ask you things because I know how to do it? So the first piece is, where do you have power and control? Take that power and control and look at all of the things that you do throughout the day. How are you filing your information? Number one complaint I get from everyone that I work with, I can't find anything. I spend days and days and days trying to look for stuff. So that's the first thing I hear over and over and over again. So, number one, how do you file your work that makes sense and people are using the same nomenclature for how we organize this work? That's a big deal. I can't tell you how many hospitals I've worked with and how many organizations I've worked with that can't find a single thing. It is a nightmare. So that's number one. Number two, when you go see a problem, I want you to draw it, meaning I want you to map out the steps it takes you to provide that service. And I want you to think about it as individualized steps. Walking to the printer, or pulling it off the printer, or scanning it in, faxing it in. Notice I'm using really terrible parts of work to describe it. So I want you to pull that out. Then I want you to take a look at it and say, okay, where do we have challenges here? Where is there a back and forth? Where is there a place where I'm doing more than I should? Where is there a defect coming in that forces me to ask a question to Jessica? Where is there a place that I have to make a phone call? And I want you to highlight where those take place. Super easy to do. There's a technique that we use called downtime. You can look it up online. It's a lean process improvement technique called downtime.
I'll add it to the notes as well for folks so they can check out the tips.
And I can put I can send you a handout that we use.
Okay, perfect.
The second piece is, how many of these do you do a day? How long does it take you to do them? How many do you get right the first time? And I'm stealing that from Karen Martin. Karen Martin wrote a book called Value Stream Mapping. I'm stealing that from her. So she wants to know how many, how long, how many are right. And right means the first time. What that includes is, do I have to ask for help? Do I have to email them and they have to clarify? That's wrong. That means it didn't go through right.
Does that include like how many rounds of feedback you have to get on a work product or an email or a report or some slide deck or whatever? Okay.
Yeah, unless you're in an iterative process. If you're in a design team and you're trying to design something, you should have a time frame for design iteration. And you time box it. You know, hey, we're doing 2 edits. We're doing 2 edits. The 3rd edit is not acceptable. And you let everyone know there's 2 times I'm going to come to you for an edit. After that, there are no more edits. That's a great way to do that. So yes, that's on iterative processes. Most processes are not that way. They should be done once and that's it. But unfortunately, that's not what we do. I'll give you a great example, the dental office I use. I go into the dentist and I get my teeth cleaned, and then I set my next appointment. And on my way out, they say, hey, we got everything. We'll see you next time. That is not true. They are going to send me an email. They're going to send me a text, and they're going to ask for their copay. Why didn't you take my copay when I walked in the door? Why are you making me do this thing? And then 9 times out of 10, they spelled my name wrong. You would think Brian Elms is really easy to spell.
I was going to say, you've got a pretty straightforward name.
I get a lot of brains, Jessica. A lot of brains. I get a lot of elm. I get a helm every once in a while. Sometimes I get helms. You never know. It's really quite fascinating because I filled out their paperwork. But when they texted me, my name was spelt wrong and my birthday was wrong. I didn't do that. That means someone typed that in wrong. So if you think about, I walked into this place, they're pretty sophisticated. They have a whole POS system. They have a system for copay, but they're still waiting till I leave. And now they have to track me down. And they're tracking me down for $22.
Yeah. And so if somebody, let's say, sees something that's dysfunctional like this,
yeah,
and they want to bring it up, right? And they don't want to bring it up as like, hey, this is an issue for me as an individual. This is, we did this when I was at the city of Sanderford. There was all kinds of things like this. And I didn't want to frame it as, hey, we've got a lot of wasteful work here and people
Right.
are, doing things that are super inefficient. And like that's a real fast way to get nowhere and kind of piss people off and make people feel uncomfortable. And we framed it as an innovation program, which I thought worked really well because these are super innovative skills that are all about improving things and doing it creatively, but more from an optimistic standpoint of like, hey, we could always be doing better. Hey, we could always be a better place to work. We could always be recruiting and retaining, higher quality talent for longer, and getting better results. Always, we could be continuously improving. And let's go from that lens and give people like interesting tools to innovate their own roles and their own teams. So when people see these types of processes that are super inefficient and frustrating for them, what do you recommend in terms of how they talk about it and bring it up to their boss, their peers, and initiate a conversation around what collectively can be done to address some of this stuff?
Ask for help. Always ask for help. So start from the frame. Can you help me? This is causing something. Don't start from, I have a way to solve this. We just need to do this. You just need to listen. Don't start there. Start with, Jessica, can you help me? I noticed last week that Brian came in and we could have charged him 15 bucks on the spot or 22 bucks on the spot. We didn't. Can you help me figure out how we could do that better? That way we have the money faster and we don't have to chase him down. We have him here. He has his credit card. Let's steal it. Instead, I'm doing the chase. I'm going to you reactionary. So start from the place of help me figure that out. And I've noticed that it takes us, this much time to try to capture someone when they haven't paid us and give them the number, right? It took me 38 minutes to track down Jessica when I could have pulled her credit card at the time of the sale. So I could have done something else in those 38 minutes, but I didn't. I had to track her down. Wonderful way. So always ask for help. The second thing, do not think that your idea is good. Please. I can't tell you how many people I deal with who think their idea is the only idea and it's the only way to make it. By asking for help, you're asking them to join your idea. But we get really fixated on us winning and proving out that we're better than our other employees or better than our colleagues, when we should be fixated on, can my colleague make this better? And I always say this, the first idea is always the worst idea. You need someone to shoot holes in it. You need someone to add to your idea. This is where I like addition versus when I don't like addition. So you always need someone to say, hey, Brian, I don't know what you're doing, but you shouldn't be doing that in the first place. This is what we might want to think about. That's better all day long. Jessica, I saw the coolest thing yesterday. I'm dealing with an air pollution team that does a lot of citations, right? And they do a lot of reconciliation. And on one form, all of the numbers that they put in go in this sequential order. But they have to take that same information and they have to put it into another form to create the actual citation. Well, in the other form, it's in a different sequence. And so what they do is they cut and paste each individual one into the space. Well, this woman changed that form and added a new side to the form. This is an Excel sheet that actually puts it into the right sequence for the next form. And all she did was create a little piece on a side of an Excel form that allows for it to, the whole thing, to be cut and pasted over instead of individual lines. They were cutting 30 individual lines over.
Oh my goodness.
Now, what she did is a little change that doesn't need any change management.
Yeah.
It's, hey, look, it's right here. If you want to cut and paste it, you can, but you don't have to. You can do the old way.
Tell me more about, so we're kind of getting to the solve it piece, and I like that you brought up these are tiny things that don't require change management. And I think about it as like these little elegant solutions that
I love that word.
that are intuitive, right? That allow people to work intuitively. It's not a new process that, someone has to go get a training before they can start doing it. It's intuitive, it's part of the workflow, and it just simplifies things. What are some other examples of what that looks like? Maybe something that could apply to any sector, any workplace that you've seen. And what are like the attributes of what a great kind of approach to solving it looks like, in addition to like bringing the pool of ideas together, having multiple people expand kind of the pool of knowledge and potential solutions, that sort of thing.
The mistake proof is the quintessential elegant solution. It really is. There's little to no change management that takes place in a mistake proof. I would argue she did not create a mistake proof. She created an opportunity. A mistake proof would be I'm typing in my address and it connects to our GIS system or it connects to Google and that comes back with the correct mailing address. So I can't key it in inappropriately. That's a great mistake proof. Other mistake proofs, we do the math for you inside of the form. Other mistake proofs, I need your name on here 7 times, and the first time that you type it in, the others fill in. Those types of things don't require change management and are by far the stickiest, elegant solutions I see. They last forever. I've actually seen some of my work come to me in bills and come to me. It's so funny. Like my dad got a bill that I made once. And he's like, "Did you design this?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's so good."
Did he put it
Uh,
on the fridge?
I asked him to, and he was so mad because I was working with an energy provider and they compare your energy use to other people around you in the same thing. And he was so mad at me because he knew I did it. But that's a great, elegant sort of thing. Like all we were doing was pulling in information so that you understand, hey, the people around you use a little less energy. Do you want a home audit so we can come in and take a look and see if we can offer you advice to lower your bill? That was the coolest piece, right?
Yeah.
Help us lower your bill. So that was really cool. I love this idea that there's elegant solutions. The simplest thing that anyone can do at any time is make a checklist. The second simplest thing that you can do is follow it.
Yeah.
That's the most elegant thing that you can create. It lasts forever. And it can be so powerful. And Atul Gawande talks about this a lot, Checklist Manifesto in his book. And he has saved millions of people's lives because of checklists.
Mm-hmm.
And if a surgeon needs a checklist, your PO department needs a checklist. Your AP team needs a checklist. Your horticultural society you need a checklist.
Yeah.
And those things also visualize it for you, right? You start to see how complicated this process is because I just found 182 checks.
Yeah.
That's way too many.
Complicated. Yeah.
Way
And
too.
and what about, I mean, the thing I hear about the most is um, way too many meetings that feel like a waste of time and way too many unnecessary back and forths that feel like a waste of time. I feel like that's, people, hey, do you have a sec? Can I just, I just wanted to, I'm just going to ping you because I have a quick question. Or, hey, can we hop on a meeting? We've got our regular standing check-ins that are useless. How do you think people should be thinking about those and addressing them to reduce wasteful work?
Like I feel like you're triggering me on purpose, but I will say some things and people will hate me. Every meeting you have is a defect. Every email you have is a defect. It means that someone wasn't able to get what they needed, and they weren't able to do it without you being there. So that's number one. Every phone call you receive is a defect. So I'm sorry, I just ruined everyone's day. The other thing you should know is too many emails, too many meetings, too many phone calls is a consequence of bad process. It is not the root cause of bad process. It is a consequence of bad process. It means the way in which you communicate requires a response. That is a problem.
I love that. That is I'm going to like put that up on a quote. That is super important, I think, to say over and over again. Because I think it's become, people just feel like this is the way that we work. Now going to work means sitting in meetings all day long and responding to emails all day long. And that's what work is. So please tell us how we can find a different way so that we can keep people focused on like doing the shit that matters.
Jessica, I had a meeting today where someone was like, man, if you just had that meeting earlier on, it would be fine. And I went, no, you shouldn't have the meeting. That means your work doesn't work. If you have to have a meeting, that means it didn't work. So figure out how to do this without the meeting. And they were like, well, they want to see the facility. They want to do a walk around. I said, film it. Give them access to you walking around one time.
Yeah. Okay. Pro tip for people listening. I use this tool all the time. I don't know if you're a fan of this, but I used Loom like religiously in my last couple of roles, my last like 4 roles, whatever, it's been around for like 5 or 6 years, maybe longer. But I discovered it like about 5 years ago and I love it. I was like, we don't need to have a meeting because I'm going to walk you through this thing in my 4-minute video clip and send it off. And like everyone should be clear about what the next steps are. And if you have any questions, hopefully you don't. I would get so few questions. Everyone would say, thumbs up, looks great, thanks. Next. That saved us an hour of walking through it back and forth. You know, I think when you schedule meetings, it's like people think they need to fill the time. And so they try to come up with things to feel like they have something to say or to fill the time when it's like, no, we could do it through like a 3-minute Loom video and there's no questions and let's move on, right?
The idea that a meeting resolves anything are people who have not been in a lot of meetings. So that's number one. If you have a meeting, have a purpose. Is this an action meeting? Is this a decision meeting? Is this a brainstorming meeting? There are different reasons to have a meeting. Totally agree. Stop having status meetings without a purpose. A status meeting with a purpose means, Jessica, you're a little behind on this product. How can we help you get this out the door? Who on the team can join Jessica to go through this review really quickly? Hey, Brendan, we noticed that you got this stuff done really fast. Do you have a couple hours that you can jump in to help Brian? That's a status meeting.
Yeah.
But this idea that you just tell everyone what you did that week is ridiculous.
Yeah.
We should have a non-verbal, visual way to show people what we did that week.
And you mentioned Kanban boards. Is there anything else kind of actionable that people can start doing to remove those status meetings and make it visual work?
But total billboards, right? Billboards and production boards are the smartest thing you can do. A production board shows people where something is as it's being worked on. Wonderful way. So a Kanban board can be useful, but they're a little limiting. A production board is going to show you a little bit more on how to do that. And to be able to have a status meeting discussion around a production board. So if someone wants to have a status meeting, I'm totally in, but you better have something on the wall that we're talking about. Yeah. I want to see it. I want to see the production. So when you're building a budget, when you're rectifying or doing the reconciliation of employees, whatever you're doing, you're in the middle of an audit, let's say, you're hiring a bunch of employees. Where are we in this process? make it visual, give it to people so that they understand what's happening, where it is, and where we need help.
Yeah.
Status meetings are like a braggadocious sort of thing that turns into like a show and tell about how good you are. And what drives me nuts about them, Jessica, is normally I'm not even listening to you. I'm just preparing for what I'm going to say to my boss to make it sound like I did a bunch of shit last week.
Yeah, and what a terrible culture to be in where you feel like that's what you have to put your time and energy to is like reproving that you're worthy of being here because of the work that you did, versus focusing on solving problems and doing higher quality, more impactful work. So I think that reorienting the frame of like what we're put like the mindset we're putting people in when we create these meetings also, it's not just that it's a waste of time, it's giving them that mental framing of their value, on the team is recapping all the things that they did, because it's the quantity of work or the updating of the status and preparing to sort of defend their place in the world, right? And their place on the team versus, hey, these are the areas where I think we can make an improvement, or here's where I need help this week in order to get this over the line for all of us. Like that's what we should be talking about, right?
Yeah. And we should be helping each other.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we like to see people like to compete
Mhm.
to demonstrate that they're a better employee than Jessica, right? They do. It's a weird phenomenon, but people compete, right? They want to prove their worth all the time because they think like when we hand out bonuses, Jessica's the only one who's going to get one unless I prove my worth, right? It's a really perverse incentive world that we live in. Instead of, hey, Jessica, I really could use some help. Do you know someone who can help me? It's totally more vulnerable, but way more productive.
And I think we need to figure out how to be more vulnerable on the teams that we're on and create the conditions where we trust each other enough to be able to have those conversations so that we can all be reminded on a daily basis that we're part of one team and that the competitor is out there, right? It's the problem we're trying to solve, or it's the other
Yeah.
company that we're trying to get, market share over, or whatever it is, depending on what business you're in. Um, and that the team we're on, these are our people. We're all here together to share in one common goal and to solve one common problem. And we have to help each other out. And I think to your point, when we don't have that trust, we're not able to be vulnerable in that way. And then we do create these conditions where we're more focused on talking about all the things that we did and defending our position on the team so that we can prove that, we deserve to stay there versus focusing on the things that actually matter.
We started the conversation about burnout, and I think you've landed at a really good place, which is how do we focus on things that matter,
Yeah.
and how do we focus on things that we have control over? And looking at the useless work of work is a great way to do that.
Yeah, I love it.
The challenge that you have sometimes is we're caught in what I call the innovator's paradox. I have a lot of work. Because I have a lot of work, I don't have time to look at it. Because I don't look at it, I get more work. Because I got more work, I don't have time to look at it. And you get into this place where you're just in this vicious cycle, this merry-go-round of death that you can't get out of. The only way out of it is to stop the merry-go-round and to look at how am I doing my work and where do I have power and control that'll help me do this a little bit better. That's the real trick. And not a lot of people do it.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate. The other thing that we talked about on the burnout side, and this is a suggestion I give to everyone around burnout. One, burnout happens when you don't have an outlet. So you need some type of outlet. And even in the book Burnout, they talk about this. You have to get an outlet. The outlet is really, really simple. It's movement, and movement works for everyone. So walk around. You're really stressed. You're really frustrated. Take a 5-minute walk. You are really upset. You need to figure something out. You feel like it's not going to get better. take a walk around the block. The movement of human is so important that I think we forget it. You don't have to exercise, right? That people who exercise, they get that endorphin, they totally understand it, they're totally into it. It's not the whole thing. Figure out how to move that benefits you to shake out the cycle that is happening. And it's a stress cycle. So you have to break the stress cycle and allow for yourself to let it all out. Maybe your movement is screaming and you need to go into a closet and you need to scream. That's totally fine.
Yeah.
Maybe movement is 10 push-ups. Maybe your movement is jumping up and down. Whatever it is. I'll never forget this. One of my favorite friends ever, Courtney Law. Love her to death. We worked together when we were I was a lot younger. She was really young, but we worked together years and years ago. She was in this meeting with me and we were trying to solve this problem. And she's like, oh man, I just had this really heavy conversation and she wasn't really there with us. And so she goes, give me 2 seconds. She goes into the corner and does a headstand. And she comes back and she's like, okay, what was your problem? And she was just like, she had completely broken the stress cycle and was ready to take on a new challenge. And I was like, what are you doing? Like, we're in suits. She's in a suit. It was just the funniest thing. Like, I hope you're getting this picture. It was wild. We were with a CFO, an HR director, myself. Like, it was hilarious.
Love it. Was this in person? Did you have in the room? Yeah, amazing.
Oh, yes. And I thought she would just like step outside and do it in the hallway or something. No, she went into a corner of our office, into the conference room and did a headstand.
Amazing. It reminded me, and I asked if you were in person because it's even funnier, but wouldn't have been as funny or as shocking when we first all kind of went fully remote. By the way, today is the 5-year anniversary of lockdown from the pandemic. So it brings this up for me too, that we're at the 5-year mark. And I think in that first year when everyone was new to remote work, I saw a lot more of this. I had so many meetings that turned into phone calls because people needed to get out, they needed to go for a walk. And they're like, nope, I'm taking this as a walk and talk. And I still to this day, I have my best, I think most like present effective meetings on a walk. And it's because you can't look at anything else. You're totally with the person you're talking to. It's a really good strategy for brainstorming, working through conflict, working through all kinds of different things. Like a walk and talk is so good. The other thing is my husband did this at the beginning of the pandemic too, and he stopped doing it. But they used to have every hour on the hour, he would drop and do 10 push-ups. And so he had these like, he did it with all of his colleagues too. It was like, okay, it's 11 o'clock, time to do 10 push-ups. Oh, it's 12 o'clock, time to do, and they'd put it in Slack and be like, ding, it's the hour, everyone drop and give me 10. And it was great because it was this fun shared experience. Everyone had the movement and everyone was kind of getting stronger. They were like, wow, we just did 60 push-ups. We just did 80 push-ups today. And you feel kind of accomplished too. So
I like reading. By the way, Burnout is wonderful. You should read it. I mean, people say the first 120 pages is all you really need to read. So I'll cut to the chase. But the basic gist is you have to have a way to recognize you're in a stress cycle and to break it.
Yeah.
And allow it to leave you. And I think that's the real trick here, Jessica. Like, how do you recognize I'm getting burned out? How do I break the stress cycle that's happening? And how do I get thoughtful enough to see it, mindful or whatever you want to say? But the basic premise is break the cycle, just like you would break the cycle of your work.
Yeah.
Break it. Look at it, allow yourself to go through it. My daughter's stress cycle is so intense, and we've worked on it for years. She can make herself sick. She will end up in the hospital with hives
Oh, geez.
She thinks she has an allergic reaction to something. And what we'll learn is that no, she's not having an allergic reaction. It's stress.
Wow. Yeah.
And we've now, well, not we, she has come up with so many ways that she catches it beforehand and now can identify it before they start taking place. Like she'll feel a little like abrasion on her palm, or she'll start to feel her throat itch and immediately go, okay, did I eat something or is this stress? And
Yeah.
she's able to break it. You want to know how she breaks it? She goes for a run.
Yep. Yeah.
It
I know
works.
at the end of the day, we are, our physiology is like, it's all interconnected, and we're actually pretty simple. Like move your body, do what you can to rest, stay
Move.
hydrated, eat regularly,
Well, and
and give yourself
the
life.
things that you don't do when you're stressed, Jessica,
Yeah.
you don't continue your workouts, you don't continue your yoga, you don't continue doing Pilates, you don't continue going to the gym to hit the bag. You stop all that because you're stressed.
Yeah.
So you do something else. You go drink.
Yeah.
You have a cocktail with your partner. You turn one bottle of wine into two bottles of wine. You find yourself, oh, I'm gonna have a cigarette tonight just to ease myself. I mean, I smoked for 20 years. I know what that does, right? There's nothing more constrictive in your body than to do that. So I think being aware of your heartbeat, being aware of your movement, being aware of what you're doing to intake it, to catch your burnout cycle while it's happening, and to not let it go forever. You have
Yeah.
to stop it.
Amen to that. And I wrote about this in a couple weeks ago, and just put this on my Thoughtful Leaders blog too, that it's also about creating little pockets of white space throughout your day. And I think we can end on this because this is about wasteful work. When you're able to cut down on wasteful work, you have more opportunities to have white space in your day.
Yeah.
Do not fill up the white space with scrolling, podcasts, stimulation of any kind, and allow yourself to have just 90 seconds, 2 minutes. Step outside and take 3 deep breaths, look around, listen to the birds, move your body a little bit. Use the white space to just check in and see how you're feeling. Are you in a stress cycle? Do you need to do something about it? Right? It's like you need those moments to be able to catch it. So I think eliminating wasteful work, doing all the techniques that you shared is going to help us create that white space. I think those are really actionable, really helpful things. And you gave really good examples about how to talk about it. And then also what to do when you do catch it, and really talking about how to address burnout and break the cycle. So thank you for sharing so much good wisdom, so much thoughtfulness, so much experience. And in the last couple minutes, just how can people find you, learn more about your work and what you're up to, and all the good tips and tricks that you have for us?
Well, Jessica, thank you so much. I'm so sorry if I called you Jess like 6 times. I probably should
Oh,
not have done that. That was
no, that's
very
preferred. We're
informal.
friends. Yeah. Everyone calls me Jess. Everyone's like, wait, why are you, nobody calls you Jessica.
I mean, it's a good place to be. So thank you so much for inviting me. Yeah, you can find me on changeagentstraining.com. That's the easiest way to get a hold of us. Also, there is a place you can sign up for our newsletter. We do a monthly, hey, this is what we're noticing in our world. And you can sign up there. It's really cool. Also, we launched a new tech offering this year for process improvement to really help people get away from some of the tedium of the analytics of process improvement. That company is called RVRWork, RVRWRK. What we try to do is get you all of your discovery of what's going on in your process to you as fast as we possibly can. We do it through an AI dynamic interview that we call Coco. and it's been really, really fun. We've launched it about 6, 7 months ago. We've worked with about 16 different organizations since our launch, and yeah, it continues to impress me, and to be able to help people discover their work of work quickly.
Awesome.
Um, you can do it in about 15 minutes, which is very different than the sort of old school way of how I described it today. So that's been really, really cool. And yeah, I've been lucky enough to do this work now for almost 14 years, specifically in places that have social impact, that really drive home a need for other people. Helping others is what
Yeah.
it's really designed to do. So, so cool to have you,
Yeah.
to be invited. I feel so warm and fuzzy, and I hope I'm in San Francisco or near you soon, and we can have dinner.
Yeah, I would love that.